Jim Perry, our past president, Maria Razo, the executive director of the Housing Authority of the County of San Bernardino, Deanna Krehbiel, the director of economic development and corporate training with the San Bernardino Community College District, and I'm fortunate to be today's moderator. So let's welcome them to the stage and give them a round of applause. Okay, so before we start with our great panel and enjoy the cushy seats there, we're going to provide an overview, and again, collaborating through crisis, a roadmap to meet today's housing crisis. So I'm going to have my colleague Horton who's in central control back there, handle our housing market snapshot, and starting with some information here on the first slide. Just wanted to give an overview of some trends in our great county. Generally, they're all trending favorably. Population is growing slightly. We're at 2.1 million. Median property values, growth of roughly 8%. So we would look at more of the resale market there. Income is up roughly 7.25%. This data is presented by the U.S. Census Bureau Data USA Metro Study, by the way. Median home price, over $515,000. So just note that the gap between existing homes, 326, new homes, 515,000. So therein lies the gap where regulation comes into play, where land costs, labor costs, and the general market come into play. All of those in the room here today have policy levers that can impact the costs and help to mitigate that gap. We also see that gap really making it challenging under those who are seeking a home loan because our FHA loan limit's in the low 400s. So anyone that wants to buy a new home is generally priced out, they pass out by the cost. So moving on to income levels and the amount of income, one's income that goes towards mortgage, roughly 26%. We want to watch that number doesn't get into the 30% range, because that's when you begin to push folks into poverty. And on the rental side, generally there are those trends heading toward that way, so we need to watch out for that. As far as cost of living, we're 28%, in San Bernardino County, 28% above the national cost of living index. So we are a little better than Riverside County, which is 43%. California is 67%. So again, when we look at the issues of housing availability, the shortage does drive up the cost and put challenges on access and affordability. The higher the prices go, the more folks are pushed into the poverty line, and we see that slight growth of 18% living in the poverty line within San Bernardino County. We also see a generally young county here. Many years ago, I passed this median age, unfortunately, of 33 years. It's 14% younger than the national average, and we like to think that roughly those in the 20 to 39 age range, that's 30% of the county's population. That's in that prime first-time homebuyer range. So there are those that are at a place in their lives that are ready to make that jump into home ownership when you look at that percentage. Also, we have almost 250,000 seniors, and so that is something we need to be mindful of, roughly 11% of the population, and many of those seniors are on fixed incomes, and they are very much exposed to the potential of being homeless, as we'll see here momentarily. But first, want to give an overview of some of the permit activity in our great county. So we'll just have Horton, who's engaged in a quick chat, but go to slide 2. Thank you, sir. We'll go to housing starts. So we look at 2005 as kind of that peak time. That's when I started at BIA, and boy, things were great back then. And then I got promoted to CEO in 2010, and we saw what happened there. Boy, we went down to 1,800 permits, so that was quite a difficult time. And we saw the trend moving upwards towards permit activity from 1,400, moving to 3,800 in 2015, We had a heightened number of 6,800 permits, almost 69 in 2017, but unfortunately the last few years we're seeing permit activity trend down. Year over year they were down from 6,800 to 5,000 last year, and year to date we have roughly 1,500 permits. Again, statewide crisis, there's 2 million homes short of what we need, and in our great county of San Bernardino, 69,000 homes short of what we need estimated by next year. Let's take a closer look at the permit activity through the first 4 months of this year. We'll see again, 2017, that was that high mark area of 6,800 for the year. Through the first 4 months back in 2017, we had 2,600 permits. In 2018, through the first 4 months, it was down 21% to roughly 2,100 permits. And through the first 4 months of this year, we're down 43% from where we were in 2017. So things are not trending as favorably as we would like, certainly. And again, I would say anytime there's a policy or regulation that's going to, A, potentially slow down the timing of moving a project into the market, create some uncertainty, or add costs, I would ask that all policymakers take a close look at that before it gets on an agenda and make sure that everything's being done to avoid that so that we can avert this trend from continuing. Let's move on to countywide homelessness, and a point-in-time count was recently conducted. The homeless count is up 23% in our county. I think part of that could be additional resources have been put in. More folks are involved with the count, so perhaps there was some uncounted individuals in the past that account for this. There's 2,600 unsheltered individuals. That's everyone from veterans, unaccompanied women, families with children. It's a 71% jump of unsheltered seniors. So again, when I talk about you have 250,000 roughly seniors in our great county, we need to be mindful of making sure this jump that we mitigate that as much as possible. Again, it's about supply of all types of housing at all socioeconomic levels. We don't have the luxury of picking and choosing housing, and we really need to make sure we're doing everything we can to get it all out on the market as quickly as possible, particularly when you're seeing these types of numbers on the homelessness front. Those, again, with more costs that are coming on, more of the poverty rate is moving up, more folks are pushed into poverty, and then we see these types of outcomes, unfortunately. So, that said, let's talk a little bit about solutions. And so we have this great panel here, and I want to start off with our tandem of president and past president, Phil Burum and Jim Perry. So, you saw that long list, gentlemen, of all the elected officials we have here today and their staff. Why don't we share some of the best practices for elected officials to consider and their staff, which can actually make a difference and promote new development. And we'll start with President Burum. That's a nice ring.
You never get tired of hearing that either. Well, I want to actually start just to provide context. Carlos did a great job, and Gordon putting together the slides and the facts and figures. But what I think that's missed in the black and white of facts and figures is the importance of housing. Just as a general rule, whenever you talk about the necessities of life, it's always food, water, and shelter. So right behind the things that keep you alive are the things that keep you safe and keep you comfortable. And I think in the meat of a conversation about fees and policy and timelines, we lose track of how important clean, safe, affordable housing really is. In California today, to be considered affordable as part of a normal monthly budget, most economists or most people would suggest that 30% of your gross income should go towards housing-related expenses. In California today, more than 40% of our population is burdened beyond the 30%, beyond the third of their income to cover housing. 1 in 5 spend more than 50% of their annual income on housing. So in the midst of our housing supply crisis, we have a tremendous housing affordability crisis, as most people that have kids or grandkids that are going out into the world trying to find somewhere to live, whether it's a new apartment or it's in a safe neighborhood, or trying to buy their first home, affordability is an issue. I'm a diehard capitalist, so I think supply fixes affordability. I think the more housing you can provide and allow to be constructed, the more likely that prices are to come down. We're currently, as Carlos described, underbuilding by a rate of about half across the state. In San Bernardino, we're about 55%, I think, of what our population growth is indicating we should be, which is resulting in us being one of the most overcrowded counties in the state for housing. So just for context of why this is important and why this is important to all of us and why we're all here today, is the intangible benefits to housing and not being overcrowded, not being overburdened economically. As far as
Phil, can I just jump in real quick? I got ahead of myself and didn't allow each panelist to make some general opening comments. So I'm going to count that as yours.
I'm done.
And we're going to go to Jim and then the ladies, and then we'll go back to that question. How about that?
Well, I wasn't really done, but
Okay.
but now you got everybody excited.
You'll be up next. We'll go with Jim Perry and then Maria and Deanna with some opening comments.
Good morning. Just up here today representing William-Lyon Homes, and we've been in the home building industry for over 60 years and have a great presence in California. Great presence meaning roughly we're going to do over 1,000 homes this year just in Southern California. So what I'd like to discuss today is just some ideas that I would like to see considered when it comes to affordability and predictability of the communities that we're developing and building in. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody and everybody being here.
Thank you. Maria?
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having us here today. It's an honor to have an affordable housing provider on the panel. The Housing Authority of the County of San Bernardino is the largest provider of affordable housing. We have been providing affordable housing to low-income families within the County of San Bernardino for almost 80 years. We are considered by our funder, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, to be one of the most innovative and progressive housing authorities in the country. And of course, we can't do that alone. We have tremendous support from a variety of partners, beginning with our Board of Governors or Housing Commission, and several other county departments and other public agencies and partnerships that have led to our success. We are considered to be a non-traditional housing authority, and that in working with our funder HUD, we have been given the opportunity to create our programs to help our families transition through and move on to economic independence, whether that means market rate housing or pursuing home ownership, which is of course our ultimate goal for our families. And we've done that through a variety of ways. An example of that would be term limits. We're one of a handful of housing authorities throughout the country. There are over 3,200 housing authorities across the country, and we have been able to successfully launch term limits, shortening the time that we assist a family from an average of 8 years to now 4 years. So that was done. Now we can assist twice as many families, not through requests for additional funding, but by helping our families transition through. And again, we credit that success to our partners. We can't do this alone. Our families need more than affordable housing. They have many barriers, including employment challenges. We've had a successful partnership now for almost 8 years with the county's Workforce Development Department. We also have a researcher. Loma Linda University is our third-party researcher. So it's extremely important that we focus on outcomes. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk about that more throughout the day, because we need to show that we're doing more with the limited resources that we have. We don't see HUD providing us with additional funding, so we need to be more creative and use the limited resources that we have as partners to be able to help our families transition through. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Deanna?
Good morning. I'm here today from San Bernardino Community College District, and we have partnered with the Building Industry Association for the past couple of years to address the needs of the workforce shortages in the home building industry. We've created a 275-hour entry-level program, a home building construction program, to work with individuals with barriers to employment, to give them the skills that they need in order to get into this industry. So I'm here to discuss that, and we'll discuss that when we get to me.
Thank you so much. We look forward to that. So now we'll go back to you, Phil, and kicking off the suggestions for our audience and elected leaders and staff as far as what could be done, what policy levers can be pulled locally to help.
I think as an introductory to this conversation is one of the things that I'd like to always encourage is for whether it's city staff, department heads, or elected officials, or people that I interact with on a reasonably daily basis. You've got to start looking at your builders and developers as partners in your city, not as the opposing team. If you think about the financial investment that major land developers and homeowners make in any particular agency or any particular city or jurisdiction, they've got a pretty big stake in the success of it. So once everyone recognizes the same end goal, they have common interest in the end game, I think that the conversations go a lot better and the end result is a lot smoother. As a builder, I think what our elected officials and the staffs in this region are far smarter than me. I'm not going to be able to give you any specific policy decisions, but I just say embrace the partnership. I always jokingly say that a lot of us grew up watching Scooby-Doo cartoons, and at the end of it, almost every time you pull off the mask and it's a real estate developer. It's not real. It's not real. It's Hollywood. No. But we're there to contribute to the community and build housing. And our goal is to build clean, safe, affordable housing that our home buyers want to live in. The only encouragement that I would offer, as far as, because I would never question my friend, the mayor of Rancho, on his policy decisions on our design review standards, but I'll say as a public builder, we spend millions of dollars a year surveying our homeowners. Asking them, what did we do right, what did we do wrong, what would you like to see in the next community, what would you like to see us do differently. And in the 300,000 responses we've gotten nationwide in the last 4 years, 5 years, not one time has a homeowner said, if I just had one more shutter on the outside of my home, it might have been so much happier. So let us build the homes that we know our home buyers want to occupy. I don't want to be flippant about it. Well, I do want to be flippant about it. We know what we're doing. Give us the latitude to deliver a product that's affordable for the home buyers that can buy today. That'll be my introductory conversation.
Thanks, Phil. Jim?
Well, some of Phil stole some of my thunder, but I agree with a couple of things that he said wholeheartedly. We need to be teammates in the effort of fixing the affordability issue. And the other thing that he stole from me was the shutter. Yeah, I mean we've never had a customer refuse to buy a home because they didn't have more siding where their trash cans reside on the side of their home. So those are a couple of the things that certainly I would like to discuss as we go forward today, is what we could do in a couple of areas to help out with affordability.
Thanks, gentlemen. Before we move on to the next question, Phil, can you maybe just take a minute to talk a little bit about the recent workshop in Montana?
Yeah, one of the things, as I mentioned, the partnership, and I take that very seriously, as does all of our staff at the Baldy chapter, is embracing our public agency partners. When Carlos and I first started talking about me taking on a more expanded role here, I said, well, if it's meaningful, if we can do something productive with it, I'm all in. I'll commit the time that you need. And our good friend the mayor of Fontana had expressed some concerns about their design review process, just on a very global level, and the concept of planning commissioners that really dictate what a city looks like at the end, how it develops. The council gets the policy decisions, but the planning commission is the implementing agency. So Carlos and the rest of our staff worked with Fontana staff, and we started testing the idea of, I think it started off being called a planning commission boot camp, but it's a workshop. The idea is so we can go in and meet with the planning commissioners and talk about, as an applicant, you know, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and then the planning commission has the opportunity to respond back, okay, this is what we're looking for as we go through, make sure you work with staff, make sure, you know, the staff typically knows what the commission wants, so the idea is to come up with the most streamlined possible process, and one of the things that came out of that conversation was the concept of legislating from the bench, which is obviously a term you hear a lot from liberal Supreme Court justices, but the city has a design review protocol. The city staff knows what that is. It's very difficult for builders to appear at a planning commission hearing and have the rules change on them. So the rules that are defined and predictable are what any business owner wants. And when you invest as much as a home builder does, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that home builders aren't particularly smart. In fact, there's a good argument that we're not that bright at all. The investment we make is often, I was talking to a friend, John O'Hanian, who has a big master plan in Hesperia. They're going to spend $62 million before they can ever deliver a lot to someone like me. And then our company would spend another $3 or $4 million before we could ever sell our first home. So the predictability of the process and not changing the rules midstream is incredibly important. So I'm not sure if I answered that question. I'll put that one back to the first question on what we can do to make things better. More predictable. The truth is, a city like Rancho is probably one of the more predictable processes. It's tough, it's strict, but I know what to expect when I go to Rancho. So I can always appreciate that.
And then one thing about the workshop we had with the Planning Commission is that we were invited for another one. So that means it went well. So we're looking forward to the opportunity to maybe emulate that in some of the other cities and have that collaborative discussion. Also, Jim, we wanted to just kind of piggyback on the design guideline theme, and you know, a lot of you have probably heard from me a time or two over the last 15 years whenever there's a fee update in the process to have a place at the table for us, and we're very sensitive to $1,000 or $2,000 fee increase, much less a $5,000 or $10,000 per unit increase. And so those are through a very methodical process, nexus studies that we review, and having a place at the table and providing that input is terrific. Sometimes we have processes that occur that have impact on costs as well, like the design of a home, and we've been talking a little bit in jest about shutters and whatnot, but you know, seriously, some of these requests add up and could be just as impactful. $5,000 per home, $7,500 per home, and that's exponential when you're looking at 50 to 100 unit projects. So let's talk a little bit about, Jim, briefly, just an example of some of the beautiful homes that William-Lyon Homes has out, and any thoughts on the design here?
Well, before I jump to that, I just want to reiterate a couple things. The main theme today, I think, is affordability and predictability. And when it comes to 360-degree architecture, it obviously has an effect on both. Typically, run through the process, you know, we're looking at purchasing a parcel of land in a given jurisdiction. We're going in and we're doing a due diligence meeting with the city, for example, and we're asking them things like, you know, what criteria do you have as far as housing is concerned? Sometimes they'll say, well, we have 360-degree architecture in our city, and a lot of times they even have a document that they publish that they can hand you that says this is what we're looking for. However, it remains fairly subjective when you think you've got those things drawn and you take those in. A lot of times it's up to that given planner on that community as to whether or not what you've drawn, which in your mind meets the criteria, is accepted or not. And then what happens is weeks go by, thousands of dollars get added to the home to satisfy that community or that city or planner, and it has a significant effect on predictability. Now we're late and we're over budget. And so I think that even though we're publishing 360-degree guidelines, I think if we could be a little bit more understanding of exactly what that means, so that we can go to the architects, draw it one time, have it submitted, and you know, within reason, have it be accepted. This product up on the screen is an example of it's our product that it's an approved product in the city of Mentone. Our models start in the month of August of this year, and I think it's a very nice looking product, but it's not over the top. It doesn't have siding near the trash cans and rocked chimneys all the way to the top and what have you. So I would just like to use this as an example of a product that I think is a great addition to the city that it is built in, but it's very predictable and very understandable by way of when we go in for the first time and have those due diligence discussions. Because obviously if we add time and money to the product post-acquisition, it's a hardship for everybody, including the potential customer that comes out to buy it.
Why don't we keep that up there, Horton, and for those, Maria, that you're serving who want to get on the pathway to being able to own a home like that, the term limits for housing assistance is very progressive. Really haven't heard of another housing authority doing that, as you were mentioning. How is your agency able to be so innovative?
Great question. We get asked that all the time, especially from other housing authorities. So we received a special designation 11 years ago called Moving to Work by Congress. We have been a high-performing agency, and so Congress wanted to look at housing authorities that were high-performing and could test new and innovative programs that would help put the focus on transitioning families through housing assistance and not have families remain in housing assistance and tie up these precious, scarce resources. So we have this designation, and so we've been working with HUD over the last several years. We started the new program in 2012, and we have successfully graduated hundreds of families through the program. Again, with our partnership with the Workforce Development Department, we've seen increases upwards of 50% on average in earned income, so employment income, as a result of the partnership in this program, and corresponding decrease in welfare income as well. So our goal is not only to transition our families out of our rental housing programs, but out of all government-assisted programs, and hopefully transition not just to market rate housing, but to home ownership. We have one of the most successful home ownership programs west of the Mississippi, and we're very proud of it because most of our families that are coming in are at or below 30% of the area median income. So they're coming in considered to be extremely low income, and so we're assisting our families. And again, it speaks, I think, to the partnerships that are needed because, you know, as mentioned on this panel, we can't do this alone, and it's extremely important for us to be able to partner together. We're doing other innovative efforts in the area of homelessness that hopefully I can speak on later. Thank you.
You know, one of the things we've been talking about so far is the shortage and the impact it has on costs. And so as you have a program that's designed to move folks on a 5-year cap situation into a more permanent situation, that could be exacerbated by a lack of availability and a lack of affordability. So we all have a role in helping the Housing Authority in its innovative efforts be successful. With that said, how can we help? What can we do to partner and collaborate and help create innovative efforts at the Housing Authority?
Thank you. We would welcome, and I know we've had preliminary conversations with the BIA on a training program. So we have the families, we have the partnership with Workforce Development. We're engaging in a partnership with Goodwill as well, which sit on their leadership council, to place our families in training opportunities. We keep hearing that the building industry needs employees and construction workers, and we are helping prepare with our partners, our families, our low-income families, to be able to transition into those jobs. So it would be great to partner with the BIA to be able to help our families get there.
Done. So part one, we'll talk about part two as to how to answer how can those cities help as well in just a moment. But I want to move over to Deanna and talk a little bit about explaining to the audience some of the particulars of this exciting program. It's really something that we'll have Phil and Jim give some examples of the challenges that they're seeing as builders. But let's get to the not the silver bullet, but I think something that could be very impactful in providing a pipeline of new trained workforce for our industry. So take it away.
So nearly 100,000 people are needed in the home building industry right now in the state of California. There's a huge workforce need. Unfortunately, students that are in high school and in college in construction trades are getting fast-tracked into union, which is industrial and commercial, not home building. And so the home building is lagging a nice pipeline to come in to fill this need of jobs that we need. So we've been working with BIA now for a few years to try and solve this issue. We've created a 275-hour program. This program covers everything from an orientation in which industry will be at the table talking about the environment and culture in which this industry works in. It will talk about the mobility and the advancement opportunities. It goes into hard skills, over 97 hours of soft skills, workability skills. It includes 54 hours of the New World of Work. It is the state-recognized work readiness program. And at the very end, they will get 4 industry-recognized certifications. They will get a book, and they will also get a tool and safety package. Approximately about a $900 package, because one of the issues that we found was that somebody would go through the program, but they wouldn't have transportation and they wouldn't have the tools. Now we just set them up for failure. So this program is really trying to be as holistic as possible and taking an individual from ground zero to getting them to be able to get into the industry with all the tools that they need. We have worked with 27 employers from the BIA's members who have given us letters of support stating that they will give them priority interviewing and hiring based on fit. So we have industry behind us, we have our association with us, and now we have the school. And the great thing is that we designed this program with individuals with barriers to employment, such as reentry individuals. We figured if we started there, no matter who we put through this program, we're going to cover them completely. And so now I've been in talks with the county with the Generation Go program. The Generation Go program includes, in the city of San Bernardino, has the high school students going into pathways, and then they go to the New World of Work program, and then they're into internships. So we're going to be sitting down and we're going to be talking to the individuals who are in the construction pathways to see if the next step we could do once they graduate is to go into this program. We're in talks with the probation department right now, parole and sheriff departments. With the prison to employment dollars that are out there, we're talking about putting our individuals through this program. This happens to be one industry that is reentry positive. It is very, very difficult for people who come out to try and get a job and change their life when everybody shuts the door and tells them no. They have nowhere else to go because everybody says no. But this industry does not. This industry says, you did your time, this is a chance for a second chance. And so we created this program with that thought in mind.
We're also collaborating with the Workforce Investment Board as well, as folks walk through their doors looking for a new career opportunity, to be able to be aware of this training program. Good point about those that have been incarcerated and served their time. The best way to mitigate recidivism is to make sure they have something to lose. Like, boy, if I mess up again, I'm going to lose this great job that's providing for me and a future for my family. That's probably one of the best ways to have someone kind of turn away from the past and move towards a better future, is having a great paying job. So we're certainly open to those who want to seek a great career in our industry. Jim and Bill, you guys have any thoughts briefly on the challenges you guys see? Maybe it's dwindled a little bit as the permit tolls have gone down, but you know, we have that up and down cycle, so the next time it's up, we can see some of the more prominent issues you were dealing with. Just want to help characterize that for the audience.
I mean, actually, one of the proudest things I think we've done since I've been more active was the kickoff of the San Bernardino Community College District. I had an opportunity to speak with a recent parolee who was so excited to be enrolling in the August program and its kickoff. Workforce training, whether it's getting into a subsidized or affordable housing program with the county, you don't get out of those programs without jobs training. Having community college districts in our local high schools working with industry to develop the curricula that these kids and adults and people re-entering the workforce need to be effective and immediately impactful to employers. It's a game changer for them as individuals, and candidly our industry, there is no home building industry 2 years, 3 years from now if we don't create a workforce. So we said we're 100,000 jobs short right now, and we're not building enough homes today. So the governor wants to build 300,000 homes a year. We're building about 140, and we don't have enough people to fill those jobs. So it's that's the impact. That's what the game changer is. We talk about all the barriers to entry into new communities. One of the biggest one is just having a labor force to build those homes. Whenever we have these conversations about what can local agencies do, what can jurisdictions do, it's just reduce the barriers to getting started. Right now, the barrier is workforce. That's got to be, I think, everybody in this room's focus. That's, CEQA. But
We have another panel on that.
I'll let this. All right, but since you brought it up, we have conversations with local council members, and as a builder, you always complain about CEQA, and they're like, well, we're a city, we don't affect that, but you can. I mean, what this state and what the Inland Empire needs is a grassroots effort to lobby your state legislators, and most of the representatives are in the room today about how important it is. The state's coming down to take away your zoning rights with this carrot and stick approach. Push back, say, you fix CEQA, I'll give you housing. Just throwing that out there as a big thing. So anyway, workforce. I think one of the things that we've done very well as an industry recently, and probably should have started 40 years ago, was engaging with school districts and such, and stop pushing our kids to get master's degrees in puppet arts with $200,000 of college debt, when the people that go through the San Bernardino Community College Districts program can come out. They don't have to talk about minimum wage. They're going to make far exceeding what those things are when they come right out of school, because the college district worked with industry trade professionals to develop the curriculum. So we're very excited about that first graduating class and looking forward to continuing to work with the district.
Jim, can you share a little bit about the recent tour you did on the job site with some high school students?
Yeah, first of all, just wanted to say I'm really excited about this program, college and high school level. I read somewhere that the average age of a construction worker in our industry is in the mid-40s, which in one way is good for old people like Phil, because there's nobody living in his heels. But on a serious note, we had an event at a community of ours. We had Upland High School students come out and to our site, and we gave them a tour. It was about a 4-hour day, and it started off with hard hats and walking through different phases of construction that were going on in our community. We got to see, we were actually trenching some home that day, so they got to see that operation. We got to take them through a framed home, through a finished home, ultimately through our model park, so they got to see it from trench to model decorated, and then had lunch and did had a lot of discussions as we went along, answered questions. I think my greatest takeaway was how they really had no idea that this whole opportunity even existed in the world. And I thought that was incredible to be able to introduce that opportunity to them. There was a few folks that were there. Some of our construction management team was there. That these guys are high school diploma people that are making nice livings for themselves, and you could see a few of the kids' eyes just light up like, wow, I didn't even know this opportunity was available for me. So I thought it went very well.
Well, thanks to you, and we're really excited about this Building Industry Technology Academy BIDA program that's in place in 2 schools in San Bernardino County. It's a program that's been around for around 15 years. Really, it's essentially the old woodshop classes with a curriculum that's been designed by our California Housing Foundation, and it's been in place in roughly a dozen schools in Orange County. So we're looking to do what we can, both in high school and those that are already in the job market per se. And this is kind of our approach at BI, try to engage the issue. One of the things that we would love to see is opportunities with the cities to send out a tweet or put a post on Facebook from time to time about the program. As residents see that, they may have a loved one that can benefit from this type of training opportunity. So we'd really welcome the opportunity to work with the cities on their public information efforts to get the word out to the residents about the program. So that's one thing if you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with me and the city? And this is great that it's with the community college district, but what can cities do? Well, that's one thing we can do is promote the program together, and so we'll look forward to exploring opportunities to doing that. Also, the challenges that come into City Hall from time to time as far as residents who have every right to express their opinion, but don't want to necessarily see any more development. And those challenges are real, and we've seen them, and we've felt them. And we're 2 million homes behind and 69,000 homes behind in our county, and we have a housing authority that's being innovative and trying to do what they can to help young folks to avoid them being homelessness and moving them out of the type of housing that they're providing that's really needed, but moving them into a market rate situation. So Maria, with that, homelessness is a real and unfortunate reality. Can you talk briefly about your first 2 permanent supportive housing sites and your efforts to help homeless families, and then just generally maybe speak to the challenges when you're trying to move a project to fruition and how you get some of that pushback and what can we do together to overcome that?
Sure, thank you. I think it's important to note that the face of homelessness is changing. And really there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about homeless. The myths relate to homeless are tied to substance abuse, or they want to be homeless. I would say, based on our experience, the majority of those myths are not true. We're looking at now economic homelessness, where families are 1 paycheck away, a trauma away from being homeless. We have homeless families with children on the street. This is not okay, and we need to work together to do something about it. We need to not just turn our heads to it. We understand this is extremely difficult work, but we need to try, and we need to try to these are people. These are seniors. Almost half of the families, the households that we assist, are persons with disabilities and seniors with average incomes, fixed incomes of $12,000 to $13,000 a year. Seniors like my mother, who worked for over 30 years as a housekeeper and now has a fixed income of only Social Security of almost $800 a month. That is not enough income to be able to afford sometimes even just renting a room from someone. You know, that on average is about $400 to $500 a month, let alone a studio or one-bedroom apartment. We have families with loved ones that have disabilities, where either single-parent households where the mother or the father unfortunately can work because they have to take care of the disabled individual. We have families that experience trauma, that go through divorce, unfortunately, and so we're trying to do our best, with our partners to be able to assist those families through a variety of rapid rehousing programs, through affiliate nonprofit Keys. And we, it takes courage. It takes courage to be able to step out front and to be able to say together we're going to do something about it. So we're trying to have that courage with our partners, with our board support, and we've embarked on opening, hopefully within the next few months, our first permanent supportive housing sites for homeless. Within the city of San Bernardino will be our first one, hopefully opening in August, and our second one in the city of Victorville within, hopefully by the end of this calendar year. It's been a very tough initiative. We embarked on this, they're both ACT rehabs. The first one, Golden Apartments in the city of Victorville, was 2-bedroom townhomes that we're converting to 1-bedroom flats, 38 of them. We have had great support also from our county's Department of Behavioral Health. As you know, we're only funded for rentable assistance. That's not enough, especially for a homeless family. They're coming in with so many barriers. And so they need supportive services. And so we have the commitment from the county's Department of Behavioral Health to provide those in-kind services. Inland Empire Health Plan has also come to the table, not just with the capital contribution, but also on-site supportive services for the households that will be living in these affordable housing communities. And so we want to empower our homeless. They're only homeless because they don't have a home. Once we house them, they're no longer homeless, and they are all people just like us. And so we need to give them an opportunity, regardless of age, regardless, of where they come from. Especially our seniors, we want them to enter into and live through their golden years with dignity and respect. And as we know that I mentioned that with fixed income as low as $800 a month, it's nearly impossible to do that without some additional support. So we're extremely grateful for the support that we've received in regards to being able to hopefully make a difference.
Well, please let us know if there's anything at the BIA we can do to support your efforts, and appreciate those comments. I want to ask Phil and Jim, as far as, before we get into some questions from the audience, Jim, can you share a little bit about the size of the home and kind of the idea of flexibility, variety in lot sizes, and also maybe both of you can touch on that, as well as certainty in the process, plan check, and those types of things. Again, those are all things that are locally in the control of our friends in City Council.
Okay, well, you're gonna back clean up?
I'll back clean up.
Okay. Lot size, home size, obviously is a huge impact, or has a huge impact on affordability. I mean, obviously, the bigger the lot you have to develop, the bigger the house you have to put on that lot. And it doesn't always pencil, it doesn't always work out to where if you have a mandate, for example, of a lot size in a given jurisdiction, and obviously followed by a mandated house size, you may not be able to even purchase those lots, let alone build those houses and make a profit. So I think there's somewhat of a misconception on that bigger lots and bigger houses equals better. Our houses that we're building today are the best houses in the country by far. And they perform just as well at 1,500 feet and 2,000 square feet as they do at 3,500 square feet. And so I would just like to encourage everybody to think through that problem as a main sticking point of affordability. Lot size and house size being bigger not only doesn't work a lot, but is not always better.
Yeah, I probably, the trend is nationally it's trending that way. I think, thank God the era of the McMansion is behind us. I think nationally the average new home size is down about 16% just from 2014. And what that should tell you is a few things. One is, I think home buyers are buying more today for efficiency than ego. I think the early 2000s, if there was such a mad dash of artificial demand, that bigger meant better. And as Jim said, that's just not always the case. One of the things that we've been able to do at Horton over the last 4 or 5 years is to, and I don't want to say this flippantly, but to figure out how to make a 2,400 square foot house or a 2,100 square foot house live like a 2,400 square foot house. There's just it's not necessary. Most of you that grew up in the Inland Empire or anywhere in Southern California in the 70s or 80s, you probably grew up in an 1,800 or 1,900 square foot home. Why do we need 5,000 square foot homes on half-acre lots? I'm not saying there's not a market for that, there's not a demand for that. Estate housing is very important as part of the overall housing solution. More housing will lead to more affordability. You need more apartments, you need more federally assisted or state assisted apartments, you need more entry-level housing, and you need more rural estates up at the top of the hill in Rancho Cucamonga. You need all of those things because as that person buys that $1.5 million estate home, he sells his $800,000 home. As he sells that, down to your 2 and 3 and 4, well, not Rancho, but down to 400,000 or so. But the supply in the market will help cure the affordability issue. I don't want to go back and just kind of rehash what Jim just said, but the more flexible the cities and local jurisdictions are, and the more confidence they have in that builder's investment and what they're willing to put into the community, knowing that their success or failure determines whether they're going to have another project, be willing to engage in the conversation and be open, because what we need is more housing. Whether it's more density, whether it's smaller units, whether it's 3,000 square foot lots or 4,000 square foot lots, anything that local, regional, and state agencies can do to promote fewer barriers is what I would focus in on.
Well, thank you for that. Let's take a few questions. Any questions from the audience? I have a few over here as well, Roman. Well, you're already over there, so we'll have you take that one.
Thank you. I'm Cassie McDuff, Housing Commissioner for the County of San Bernardino. I'm glad you asked the question about affordable housing because everything I see being built now are like this 2-story large homes on what I would call a small lot. Can builders build homes on a reasonable sized lot that are small enough for people to afford. I mean, the median housing prices we saw from the slides earlier is over $500,000 for a new home. Can builders build them without government subsidies?
No. Cassie, and I don't want to be flippant about that, but the beautiful thing about the Inland Empire is there's an abundance of land. The bad part about land is there isn't going to be any more made. So the larger the lot requirement for each individual new home, the fewer new homes can be built. So in answer to your question, it's probably two parts. I've always found it fascinating that the home building industry is one of the few industries in this country that's asked to subsidize itself, whether through inclusionary housing regulations or affordable housing fees. Home builders are expected to provide at market and below market housing. Restaurants don't have to do that. TV manufacturers don't have to do that. If housing is important, and it is important, then let's stop talking about spending $3 trillion on cleaning up college debt, and let's put some funding into local agencies so they can provide affordable and hand-up housing versus hand-out housing. What a builder is looking for is a solution where they can sell a home. The reason you see most of the $500,000 homes in this area is it's a deeper buyer pool. That market is a more predictable buyer's market. Entry-level housing is not as predictable. There's a lot of barriers to first-time home buyers. So you'll get more homes built by builders in a market they can more predictably sell in. I'm not sure if that's a complete answer, but that's mine.
Next question?
Yes, Mike Stover, Planning Commissioners, Chino Hills. Thank you for the panel, very interesting. I have two related questions. One has to do with the lack of one-story homes for seniors like myself, in the 70s and beyond, that will have a mobility problem sooner or later. And the related question is your cost in creating homes. Can you provide some type of breakdown at this session or after this session in your major cost components? The land costs, the construction costs, the local fees costs, overhead costs, other items that would help us understand the cost pressures that you have, so that when we review projects, we understand the major cost numbers. And when we hear from people, why can't they build houses we can afford for us, but not for other people sometimes? Thank you very much.
One of the things that we're doing in part 2 of our Fontana workshop is we're intending to bring an architect that can work with the commissioners to let them know the bang for the buck on design review. And that's not a complete answer to your question, but I guess I say that to say we would be happy to do that with Chino Hills as well. There's a misconception that a $600,000 house leads to $300,000 in profit. If that were true, you would all be home builders. So what if, well, I'm assuming you all would be. But yeah, we'd be happy to go over those. It's not really possible to do it from this environment, but we'd be happy to follow up with you and work with you as an individual, work with the commission in general.
We recently had a similar type of estimate graphic with our friends at California BIA. Put that together, so if we can get that to you and share that. I think we have one more question, Roman.
Good morning, Bill Rue, Council Member, City of Montclair, and also Government Affairs Director for the Citrus Valley Association of Realtors. Thank you for this opportunity today. One of the things I see that I think we've done fairly well in the region is to create subsidized rental housing, which is very good. We have a lot of providers of that. The problem becomes when they cap out of that, there's nowhere to go in most of those communities. We do not have enough affordable ownership housing. City A says, oh, we are the affordable community, and then they point to City B. City B is more affordable than City C. We have to end that. One of the thoughts I have, would it be possible for the home builders and the cities to get together in a team, which I agree with, and create an environment where we could do prefab housing, not mobile homes. Prefab housing anchored to a foundation. The reason I mention this is I was in Newport Beach about a year ago, and I saw some beautiful homes. And in looking them up on the MLS, which I can do, I found out that the particular units I was looking at were prefab homes anchored to a foundation. They were beautiful. They looked like Cape Cod craftsman type homes. And it would be perfect here, it would bring down the cost. Would that be something we could actually look at here? Especially for cities that have mainly infill left.
I want to let Jim answer that because he has some experience working with a company but home building innovates at a near glacial pace. So those types of innovations are, I think, in the future. There have been a few people on a small level that have figured it out in some areas, but I'm gonna let.
We've done some prefab wall panels. I won't go into bore you with details, but we've done some of that in the past, and there are some efficiencies that can be gained. It's just it's not a very common thing around these parts anymore. I think it's doable if you have the right people, the right system, and it certainly would lead to lower costs, and it's something that you know, it's an interesting idea and something I think can be executed.
And it's one of those goes around, comes around. The Sears catalog home, built Cucamonga in the Ontario area back in the early 1900s. So it's finding a way to do it efficiently and then also catering to the market. Californians, we're arrogant. We want our custom homes. So finding ways to innovate and satisfy the buyer with an efficient floor plan, it has to happen. You're right, Councilman. It's the way that it has to be achieved.
Before we thank our panel, I just have one final request. If you're a city here today and you're on staff and or a council member, we're going to have a panel in a few minutes about arena roundtable. I'd ask you in the very near future, if you haven't already done this, to ask staff to come up with a arena game plan. So what are we going to do? What can we do? Because we know most likely that whatever numbers are being put forth, whatever arena numbers you have now, generally speaking, we're maybe 50% of what those arena numbers were estimated to be. So looking at those numbers now, and being short of that, and knowing that most likely those numbers are going to go up 25 to 30%, what can we do to decrease the time and decrease the costs when the builders come with a project? What's our game plan, and what roles do we have on a policy lever to get as close to meeting those RENA numbers as possible? More to come on RENA in a bit, but with that, we look forward to working with all of you, and let's give our panel a round of applause. And thank you.